It's go time.
Welcome to the Third Down Gamble podcast with your hosts, Don Charbin and Heath Graham.
We hope you're safe and well wherever you are in this beautiful world of ours. And just to let you know where we are, it's a snowstorm as we record. Most people around here are very grumpy that has happened. I'm not so. It's March, whatever. But if it does it at the end of June, then I might be a little bit more perplexed.
It's not surprising we got one last hurrah from winter. We live in the prairies. It kind of comes with the territory, but about probably 10 to 15 centimeters here, heavy, wet stuff, but it should melt fairly quickly.
It could, depending on what happens next. And that's the old, is it going to be followed by a cold front or a warm front? Typically around here, wintertime, it's a cold front and it's rock solid. But in the spring, it could warm up enough to help it along. It was way more than forecast. That's the part that surprised me. We were expected to get 5 centimeters, which for our American friends is about 2 inches. We got way more. Let's talk too about something that we could not see. Granted, we can see the snow coming down here, but we could not see any performances at the CFL Combine. Thoughts on the fact that, again, second year in a row, that they didn't put it up anywhere to be found?
It's disappointing for sure. I think there are some very vocal CFL fans that are screaming for more coverage of the Combine. I don't want to tell people how to do their jobs, but I don't think it would take a lot of effort to have some sort of streaming available with or without commentary. We don't necessarily need somebody dissecting every run, every bench press attempt. They can do a 10-minute wrap-up at the end of a session and let us know the thoughts from what they saw, but you can have raw data streaming and just seeing the results of how quickly those guys are running those 40s, how many reps, etc. It's, as I said, it's frustrating and disappointing that we don't have more access to this. These are future stars of the CFL, and it would really be nice to see what they are bringing to the table.
It's an out of sight, out of mind type of thing that I see this as. When you do not promote, and they did promote the event, but when you don't promote it, that people can consume it, whether it's on YouTube, CFL Plus, TSN, I can't blame them, but somebody somewhere has got to have some room to put this up. And if there's a cost issue, Canada West, all the university conferences in Canada have a package where you can buy for about $100 and you can watch any game that's an in-conference game from that area. I'm in Canada West, so I watch all of the Canada West stuff. You can't tell me that you can't tap the guys that produce that and say, hey, are you available this weekend?
And just to clarify, that's not just football you're talking about with that Canada West package. It's volleyball, basketball, hockey, track and field. Every event is available to you. That's a great idea, is to somehow tie in with the U Sport packages to showcase this. And it is a lot of U Sport athletes. Now, there are several that also attend colleges and universities in the NCAA, but we are producing talented football players in Canadian football programs. And as I said, they're going to be future stars of this league. We know how valuable Canadian talent is on a CFL roster as well. It would sure be nice to see, instead of just names on a page when you're trying to figure out the CFL draft. There are analysts like JC Abbott from 3 Down Nation that do a fantastic job of breaking down draft eligible players. I know he digs deep into this, but without having that showcase, the rest of the CFL fans and media that aren't on site don't necessarily get to see it.
And not all of us are close enough. Not all of us have the wherewithal, the time away from work, whatever the case is, to get there. You and I have jobs outside of our podcasting lives. It's tough to get away. And Edmonton, granted, it's close enough. It's the next closest center to us that has a CFL franchise. But even still, that's a 5-hour trip one way. The expectation that I had was that, okay, they've learned their lesson. They're going to bring this back up and they're going to put it somewhere to be consumed. Why don't you want to create hype right now? Why do you want to wait until training camps? Now it's a month away, yes. But even if it's a cost benefit analysis, let's say you spend $50,000 on this, just for sake of argument. I may be way off. That you wouldn't get a derived benefit because you're whetting the appetite of all those people that want to go see football and want to see maybe a teammate, want to go see a family member, want to go see somebody that they followed in college at this combine so that they can see if they've measured up and would be in the draft.
And I did see some social media posts here and there about the combine, but not having the ability to see it on a broadcast is disappointing. And I take, just reading through some of the articles, there's an offensive line prospect named Nicholas Henning who ran a 4.9 40-yard dash, which is the fastest by a lineman prospect in over a decade. He's 6'6", 298 pounds. And to see that guy blazing down the track in a sub 5-second 40 would be something. And again, we get a little social media hit about it here and there, but not to see how he measured up against the other prospects in that class.
And as much as this league wants to generate revenue, wants to generate interest, wants to grow their revenue streams as much as possible, you got to spend to make, and you've got to invest. And I just don't understand. This is one slip that keeps coming again and again and again. It's not like they don't know when it's happening. They don't know where it's happening. They know all of that well ahead of time. If you can find a way, do it. Get it out there. I'm sure, and as you said, raw audio, and maybe have somebody with a computer that can post the times on the screen or the name or the school, typical bug stuff that you see splattered on screens nowadays. So have someone dedicated to that. I'm sure you could get a volunteer that would love to do that because there may be somebody wants to help out in this process.
There are already volunteers recording all of that data. There's scouts from teams that are recording all of that data. It's there. We need somebody to take the initiative to allow the masses to see it.
The NFL, with their draft, now this isn't even the combine, but with their draft, it started in the late 1970s. We had Upton Bell, son of a former commissioner of the NFL, on this podcast tell me straight up, he was on the very first broadcast of the NFL draft. It was on PBS. That's where it started. Small beginnings. Look what it is now. We don't know from small beginnings where this combine could be. But the problem is that the CFL doesn't seem to really be interested. Now, let's say, for sake of argument, in 2024, they had 1,500 people consume it from day one and day two. Do you stop and say that's not enough? Or do you go and say, let's see if we can grow that. Let's promote it and let's get it up to 5,000. Oh, great. Maybe we can hit 10. Now we're up to 20. And who knows where it goes from there?
The NFL draft, that's a great comparative because it has taken off to be a massive 4-day event now with on-site analysis from several pundits. All of the major media outlets are there. And the NFL Combine as well has become a multi-day event. You've got people breaking down every category, every competition, journalists and analysts that know the NCAA players who are highly touted prospects, who jumps off the page as a surprise. There are people that have gone from a projected third rounder into the late first round because of how they perform on the combine days, and they can really increase that draft value.
Is the NFL Combine, the scouting combine, is it a moneymaker for the NFL Network? I don't know if it is or isn't. It's still something that they feel compelled to do. And granted, their market is bigger and their audience is likely bigger just as a given. Still, they provide that coverage from sunup to sundown. The CFL, we're not asking them to do everything. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why is it getting bums in the seats? Why is it, are you missing opportunities in front of that where you can generate interests, motivate people to talk about it?
And I think about the CFL cities that host these combines as well. I know there is cost involved, especially if, say, TSN, for example, wants to broadcast the combine. they are going to have to send a TSN crew out there to do so. In every CFL city, you've got CFL alum who could easily sit there with a TSN personality and talk about it. Dwayne Ford, for example, is a prime candidate for something like this. He knows the CFL, the pro game, as well as the U Sport game in this country. His knowledge is vast, or anybody that's been through either a CFL or NFL combine can bring a lot of insight to the table as well. So it's not like they would need to send the entire Friday Night Football panel out to cover a combine. I think you could do it a lot more compact than that, but also draw on some great resources from within the communities.
In the NFL, in their scouting combine, they have two people basically up in the booth, and they do most of the discussion. And then they've got somebody down on the field and one other person that they call in for expertise. That's four people that are on air. And most of the time, you don't see any of them. You just hear voices because you're focused on what's happening on the field. It's a great motivator because when you look at it and you see certain people do amazing things, run very fast 40s, throw the ball 90 yards, whatever they can provide for the audience, then you get awestruck and people start talking about the NFL and looking forward to the NFL draft. Well, why can't you do that in the CFL? Again, even if it's costing $100,000, I'll bump my price up. Spread it out. Get a sponsor. Say somebody wants to put $25,000 toward it. You can't tell me that there isn't somebody that wouldn't be motivated. BioSteel supports the Canada West television. Maybe they would be interested in doing this too. I know they're not an official sponsor of the CFL, but you could reach out to them. I'm just using them as an example. I know they had Anytime Fitness who presented this, but for Anytime Fitness, are you thrilled that this doesn't go up on YouTube or doesn't go up on CFL Plus?
Hi, this is Morley Scott from 8080 Ched in Edmonton, and you're listening to the Third Down Gamble podcast.
If you tuned into last week's episode, we had a lengthy discussion about the future of the Calgary Stampeders home field. Coach Dave Dickenson has come out and said that the Stampeders need a new stadium in the next 5 to 7 years.
McMahon Stadium was built in a rush, and it was done very well in 1960. It was addressing a need. The Stampeders played at Miwata Stadium, which was more to the western side of the city. I've seen Miwata. It's still a football field. The accommodations for patrons weren't enough. It was too small a venue. So they moved and quickly built this McMahon Stadium in 1960. It has served extremely well. In fact, at the time that it was built, it was a marvel given how quickly it had gone up and how well it had been built. But the stadium now is 66 years old. The average life expectancy of most stadiums, if you look at NFL stadiums, is about 20 years. Not that we're saying that CFL teams need a new stadium every 20 years, but when you look at Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, Hamilton, those markets getting new stadiums, and then British Columbia with a massive upgrade, interesting to find out what will happen in Montreal ultimately, because of course the Big O is getting a new roof. Do the Alouettes dare move out there? I don't think they want to, even though it's a fantastically huge facility. But again, do you want to get caught in that situation of 50,000 people with 25,000 there? 25,000 is a break even in this league. That's always a tough equation.
It is. And I think for the Alouettes to consider moving from Percival Molson at McGill back to the Olympic Stadium, they would have to see multiple consecutive sellouts, making the tickets a hot commodity, if you will, to make it worthwhile to go into a larger expanse that is Olympic Stadium. Interesting comments from Dave Dickenson, however, just given that he's been involved with the Stampeders for as long as he has, about a third of the lifespan of McMahon Stadium, Dave Dickenson has been a part of that organization. So he knows the ins and outs. He knows the shortcomings. And I think what he said echoed a lot of what we discussed in our previous episode.
Yeah, it's getting aged underneath, especially. The seating is a mix of bucket and bench seats. It depends on what row you sit is where the bench seating appears. It's not the greatest when you sit on bench seating. The sightlines, though, in that stadium are fantastic. It's a great, great venue to watch a football game because you are close to the field and the area is just gorgeous. If you're got a timeout and you want to poke your head and see what else, because you can see downtown Calgary. To the south, you can look at the campus of the University of Calgary. The other direction, it's beautiful up there, but it's what's happening down below. It's the amenities. That's the problem. The stadium needs two things if it's ever going to survive. It needs luxury boxes built across the top of the stands as they sit right now, which I don't think structurally they can do. And they have to just gut everything underneath to make it much more fan friendly, because you do feel like you're going through catacombs down there. It's not so bad. Montreal is actually much more rustic in that feel, but in Calgary, you do feel like it's a bit of a throwback to an era that maybe is leaving.
You've hit the two key points. Luxury boxes build revenue. They have the big money people coming in to purchase or subscribe to those luxury boxes. The other thing that you hit on is the fan experience. And we've seen this movement over really the last probably 20 years across North American sport venues about how you enhance that fan experience. And McMahon Stadium doesn't really have the space or capability to do it. You look at, you mentioned Mosaic Stadium and Princess Audio Stadium in Winnipeg, how much they have opened up those concourse levels. The quality of the vendors has improved a lot. They have specific social areas for the fans. You've got the Pill Zone in that South End Zone in Regina. You've got the Rum Hut in Winnipeg. That's a popular destination for people to enjoy the game. The seats are a lot more comfortable. They all have cup holders. You've eliminated those bench seats. All of those things enhance the fan experience and makes it a better, more enjoyable way to spend an afternoon or an evening.
Other aspect of both of those stadiums, and in Hamilton as well, I've been there, BMO in Toronto, the concourses, the way they're set up, yes, they're much wider, you're not stepping on each other to get around underneath, which is fantastic. But the other thing too is when you're going to go back to your seat, the way they've got it designed is that the field opens up to you, where in McMahon Stadium, you have to climb some stairs to get up to a point where you can see the field again. And then, depending on where you are, obviously in the stadium, but it's a very narrow confine. You can't really hang out there for more than a few seconds because someone else is probably moving along. In Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, those areas are much wider. And in fact, in the end zones, you could walk around above the field, and Calgary's done a lot to enhance that. But it's between the goal lines. That's where their biggest problem is. It's that luxury box and all the concessions and other amenities underneath.
In some sad but maybe not unsurprising news, Chris Strevler has announced his retirement from professional football, most notably in Canada. Of course, the 2019 Grey Cup run that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers went on was in large part due to the heart and tenacity of Chris Strevler. Never fully developed into a starting quarterback in this league, but somebody that brought a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm for the Canadian game.
He fit Winnipeg so well. He's just got that sort of rugged look to him, and he embraced that city as much as the city embraced him. In that 2019 Grey Cup, it was him that was throwing more touchdown passes than Zach Collaros. And he found Andrew Harris in the back of the end zone that pretty much put the game away. He was a sort of a secret weapon at that time. Teams hadn't really countenanced how to deal with him. Over time, though, they figured out that if you just keep him in the pocket, make him a passer, his passing wasn't as good as maybe you would have expected. But if you want to have heart, leadership, and courage, he's your guy.
I think Drew Wolotarski, when he announced his retirement with his one-day contract with the Bombers, let the cat out of the bag a little bit that Strevy was following along with him. A couple of really devastating leg injuries slowed Chris Strevler down, and to have a quarterback that relies on his legs as much as a power runner that Chris Streveler was, you can understand, even at only 31 years old, why it's time to hang him up from professional football. It's a lot to come back from, and a key part of his abilities was taken away.
When he got that latest knee injury, and especially the way it happened, it was just a move to the outside, trying to make a cut, and that leg just buckled and went away. You knew it was over. And it all traces back to a Labor Day rematch where he got blown up. This is the hard part of football, is that injuries sometimes can be so devastating that they become impossible to get back from. Looking back even at the career of Zach Collaros, in 2019, where was he in the universe? He had been let go by the Riders or traded to the Toronto Argonauts. The Argos didn't see any room for him, and he was kind of in limbo. He winds up in Winnipeg right at the end of the season, and everyone's like worried about his health and should he even be out there. And look what happened since.
That success was built on the offensive line as well. They brought in a quarterback that a lot of people thought was at risk of injury, and they kept him upright. They gave him a chance to settle back into the game and lead the team on. And we know Matt Nichols suffered an arm injury that knocked him out as the number one guy for the Bombers. They knew they had the talent, and Chris Streveler probably wasn't going to be the guy that could lead them all the way through, but a key component. And let's not forget, he also had opportunities with 4 teams in the NFL. He did start a game for the Arizona Cardinals. He was briefly with Baltimore and Miami in their practice squads, as well as on the active roster for the New York Jets. This was between his 2 stints with the Bombers, 2018-19, and then again in 24 and 25.
He gave it everything he had. Coming back to Winnipeg, there was a huge sigh of relief, I think, in Winnipeg, that they were so happy to see him back. And then the injury started to pile up. Even still, he had his moments. He just reminds me of Bud Grant in so many ways. If you don't know, he was the head coach of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for probably about 10, 11 years. But he led them to so many Grey Cups. And this was in the late 50s and early 60s. He was an offensive lineman originally. Moved on to the Minnesota Vikings and coached them. But he was that same type of outdoors-ish, the cold isn't cold enough for me type of guy.
I think one of the endearing memories for Blue Bomber fans would be that 2019 Grey Cup celebration of a shirtless Strevy in a fur coat and a cowboy hat. And that was, I think, bringing the cup back to Winnipeg after that long drought, and to see a player with that kind of enthusiasm and love for the city will be something that fans will remember for a long, long time.
And then the question becomes, what does this mean for the Blue Bombers going forward? Not so much that the team didn't realize that this would be happening, but more so about the locker room. What was his influence in that locker room? Did players gravitate toward him? And if so, what did that mean for on-field performance? Are they going to miss? It's sort of an Adam Bighill thing all over.
You talk a lot in sports about the glue guy. He's maybe not the best player on the team, but he is very, very valuable in the locker room, on the practice field. Looking at the Bombers, you mentioned Adam Bighill. We talked about Drew Olatarski, Jamarcus Hardrick as well, are 4 guys that were really some of those glue guys for that Winnipeg run of 5 straight Grey Cup appearances. Hardrick's in Saskatchewan. Olatarski's retired. Bighill has probably retired. I don't know if it's official yet, but he was in Calgary last year. Streveler's now retired. Those are 4 big personalities that are no longer with the Bombers organization. And it will be interesting to see who steps up into that role, not just as the strong leader, but the guy that can keep people loose. Willie Jefferson is still there. I think he's another one of those types of players. He can't go it alone.
Zach Collaros especially is not a rah-rah guy. He's pretty much, I'm about business and let's get it done. He's very accommodating with media. He's very accommodating with fan requests, but he's not the type of guy that would lead the team rushing out on the field. He's more the guy at the back, making sure that I'm ready and I'll get this job done. So is it a Brady Oliveira thing? He's young, he's exuberant, and he's been with the team through good and bad.
That's a possibility too. I just seeing his personality, I'm not quite sure if he's that same glue guy that we're talking about either. Very positive. I just saw this past weekend, there is a documentary series about him rescuing dogs going to be available on CBC. So if you want to see the huge heart that Brady Oliveira has and his way of giving back. I encourage people to check that out. Little sidebar there, but I just don't know. I'd have to go through the Bombers roster and see who else might really step into that role as the locker room guy.
Well, it might be time for Brady Oliveira to step up and be that guy because, I mean, last year he and the offensive coordinator didn't get along, despite the fact that when he got his award for MOP, that same offensive coordinator was his running backs coach, and he thought he was the best thing since sliced bread. He's got to learn to get through that a little bit. Don't air your laundry out too high so that everyone can see it. Keep some more things closer to your chest and keep it quiet. If he can grow from that experience, and hey, we all make mistakes where we say something that maybe on reflection we go, ooh, I didn't really mean that. And boy, that came out wrong. But you got to learn from it too, right?
You do, absolutely. And I think he is a player that obviously is being paid a lot of money to stay in Winnipeg. He re-upped on that free agency contract. And this might be an opportunity for him to show that leadership as well. I think in general, running backs, well, and receivers to some degree as well can come across as selfish, but they have to be in a way to earn those contracts. And a guy like Brady Oliveira, he has spoken quite succinctly about wanting the ball more, wanting to be the guy that drives that offense. That maybe has come across as a bit arrogant, as a bit selfish, but it's a chance now for him to really show that that's not necessarily what he's about. He's a team first guy.
I guess it comes down to, is there a way to say it that doesn't seem to lead to this sort of perception that maybe you're a little bit too high on yourself? For some receivers, and I think of Darren Flutie especially, a guy who every time you needed a reception got it, but he never said anything. He never talked about anybody. He just wanted the team to win. And that was kind of his attitude through it all. He was always trying to prove himself. Nothing he did yesterday mattered because tomorrow it has to matter more. So I've got to be there to prove myself. Maybe in the huddle, he was saying, I'm open, but that's in the huddle. That goes on all the time. If you're not, the saga of Taylor Elgersma continues to wind its way through. And this time it's now an issue with a pending work visa that wasn't available for him so that he could not be on the roster of the Birmingham Stallions as they started their United Football League regular season play this last weekend. It just seems like everything about this journey has had its stumbles for Elgersma. Now, this isn't his fault. This is a legal problem that someone has to take care of. It's not anything I don't think that he forgot to do. You've got people that are charged to do with this, and processes take time. So it's not really an issue of fault. It's an issue of it just didn't happen. But partly because maybe he was still at the Combine in Indianapolis, chucking balls, looking to see if anyone was noticing, and kind of pushed off the UFL for a little while.
I'm absolutely no expert on American tax law and work visa requirements. I just find it a bit strange that he had NFL opportunities with tryout camps and that sort of thing. So obviously he had some sort of visa status to go through his runs with the San Francisco 49ers, with the Green Bay Packers. The Stallions did draft him during the UFL draft. They have taken an interest in having him on the roster. I just don't understand, having that background of already getting some professional pay in the US, how this didn't come to fruition for him.
Unless there was a timeline, a sunset clause that ran out. Maybe you could only get it for 12 months, 18 months, whatever the number happens to be. Then this was coming to its termination. You have to renew, and maybe there was a hang up in getting the renewal. It doesn't matter. Sometimes these things take time because they're taxed to the limit in terms of staffing as well. And with a lot of requests, the numbers are up. And then you've got other considerations, obviously.
It could be very specific to each team as well. I'm not quite sure. I know laws vary from state to state. So perhaps he was licensed or has the appropriate visa to work in Wisconsin and in California, but not Alabama. If there's any American listeners that can help shed some light on this, we'd love to hear from you to explain how this can happen. The big question now is, where does this leave Taylor Elgersma? He was not on the active roster for week 1. There are 3 other quarterbacks that were dressed and in roster spots. Matt Corral was the starting quarterback. Connection to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Michael Ayers was on the roster as well, and Donovan Smith. So that's 3 quarterbacks not named Taylor Elgersma that are in that squad. And is he now going to be the odd man out, or are they high enough on him to work through these visa issues and find him a spot?
Well, they're going to have to move quickly, because if they don't, then there could be other issues down the road for him. Now, the Stallions won their opener in the UFL. Always bodes well for whoever got the start in that game. Granted, it was close, 15-13. They still won it. And in a coach's eyes, if you can guide your team to victory, chances are you're going to be back out there the following week. You mentioned the quarterbacks that are there. Of course, it's more competition. But where I want to go to with this, and this is something we've talked about a little bit, but I want to dive deeper into this. If you're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, you drafted this guy 18th overall in the second round of 2025. How long is your rope of patience? How long before all the strands start to fray and it starts to unravel?
With somebody that has the ceiling of Taylor Elgersma, I think the rope is pretty long. I think you want to give him that opportunity. We've seen a lot of first round and second round CFL draft picks that end up on NFL rosters and you never see the light of day. Let's also remember that this draft pick position was based on a bonus pick for having the most number of Canadian players on the field. This was a rewarded pick. It was an extra, which is partly why the Bombers were willing to take a stab at Elgersma. If he does come north to the Bombers and becomes the next quarterback, it's a genius move. If he doesn't, they're not really out that much. Now, you talk about where this leaves the Bombers. Zach Collaros, as I stated before, I'm surprised he's back for the 26th season. I'm pretty sure this is going to be it for him. He's kind of indicated that this is his swan song. That leaves Terry Wilson still on the roster that has had a backup role, but not a lot of game time. And Peyton Thorne and Bryce Perkins are the other 2. Now, Perkins comes with a lot of upside with some NFL experience. Remains to be seen how he adapts to the Canadian game, but the Bombers need to start that succession planning. And if Perkins and Thorne don't have big camps, you've got to be making all those calls, emails, texts to Elgersma to see what it's going to take to land them.
But that's the thing. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are in this chase mode. Even though they drafted him, even though they still have his rights, they're sitting there wondering, well, okay, is it going to be the UFL? Oh, no, wait, no, he's going to try in the NFL. Wait a minute. No, it's like there's this minutia that keeps going on around him. And I don't begrudge him giving it the try. Like, go for it. If you can get it, great for you. You win. But in the interim, it just seems like as he pushes through, he's not getting to where he wants to be. And his hope now, I'm sure, has to be that if I play the American game and I excel at it, that the NFL is going to want me. But of course, the NFL, how many quarterbacks have they plucked out of any variation of UFL, USFL, AAF, whatever? How many have gone up to play in the NFL? Not many. And have they stuck?
I am thinking back to Kurt Warner out of the Arena League back in the early 2000s with the Greatest Show on Turf Rams Super Bowl victory. Other than that, I can't think of anybody that's really come through these stages and been a Pro Bowl or Super Bowl champion or anything like that. And as I said, there's 3 other quarterbacks on this roster that were ready to play and available to play in week 1. He's now got to try to fight his way back into even being dressed for a game, let alone starting. I think this is really a last opportunity for Elgersma. I imagine if he doesn't get a chance to showcase his talents with Birmingham, that there aren't going to be any NFL teams come knocking.
Probably the most famous of the last chance group, I guess, if you want to call him that, was Taylor Henneke, who made some starts in the NFL, actually performed fairly well. His career hasn't blossomed in the NFL since that sort of big splash when he first got in there. You're on a wing and a prayer in some instances in that way. And again, I don't begrudge anyone that wants to follow that, because that's all you need is that horse to come in and it's going to bring you all the riches. But for Elgersma, and especially the Blue Bombers, I just If you're looking at this situation and you're just wondering, well, what is wrong with us? Like, why don't you want to be here? Even if you want to go back to the NFL and give it a try, a la Nathan Rourke, why not come up to Canada, spend some time with the Blue Bombers, get some starts, get some playing time, set the league on fire? You don't think the NFL is going to be excited about that?
They certainly could be, and it's probably a better opportunity for him. I believe what he's trying to do right now is showcase his capabilities of playing the American game on an American-sized field. You can light things up in the CFL if front offices of NFL teams don't think that you're adaptable to the American size and style of play. You're not going to make it either.
He's got the size. He's got all the measurables that you want, the acumen, everything like that. He's from U Sport, which the Americans kind of don't pay attention to as much as they need to. And B, what scout is championing him? What person is out there saying, this is my guy. I've seen him all the way through. I know I can trust him. And so much, we've talked about it incessantly. The NFL is about who you know. And if you don't have somebody in the coach's ear saying, this guy belongs here, what is going to get you there?
Well, that's part of why he's playing his trade with Birmingham right now as well, is there are people on that Birmingham organization that have connections to NFL coaches. Again, like you said, if he has the opportunity where he can light that league on fire, there might be some coaches willing to make a phone call to the Stallions organization and ask some questions. But beyond that, it's a very, very long, difficult climb for Elgersma to break into an NFL team.
And how many scouts are at a game, and how many scouts are spending time watching all of these games? Because they've got their own people worrying about the NFL draft coming up. They've got all of that investment that they have to bring to fruition. So you've got a whole spate of college athletes wanting to make the NFL. And every year there's another 200 more that move into that room and say, pick me. And the guys in the UFL and even in the CFL, you start to get pushed back a little bit further. Now, the CFL, we know it's a long-standing tradition. You can make a great living up here playing the game. And he is Canadian. He's got a home. Maybe he doesn't want to play for Winnipeg, and maybe that's what he's waiting for, is for the Bombers to finally release him. I doubt that that's the case, but you could speculate. It's just after all of that he's been through, and maybe it hasn't been enough, but it just starts to sing to me that at some point this isn't working, and maybe I need to try something else. And maybe his handlers have to start thinking about this in a different way.
I'd be very surprised to not see him in the Bombers camp come 2027. I don't know what this year holds. If he continues to pursue the UFL and try to apply that into an NFL opportunity. But beyond that, I think this is his last gasp at the American game without having an opportunity to start. I would have loved to see him with the Bombers this year, to have a season with Zach Collaros mentoring and tutoring him and teaching him the Canadian game. I think that would set him up set him up well for success in the Canadian Football League. If Collaros rides off into the sunset after this season and it's an open camp next year, he's going to be a raw talent coming back in without having that opportunity to learn.
Agreed. And when I look at Curtis Rourke, who's spending his time right now with the San Francisco 49ers, that was a draft pick. That's some capital that was invested in him. They're waiting for that knee to heal, and they're going to give him every opportunity to have a chance. The Rough Riders may be out of luck in this in the long run. It's hard to know until he actually does get some playing time with the 49ers. But there's a guy that was drafted. He actually made the draft, and he is on their roster. Where Elgersma, yes, he has done everything he can to get noticed. He spent time in 2 different camps. It's just not happening. And I just wonder, are you giving up some of the best years of your life not being able to play? Is it the money that you want, or do you want to play? For most people, sadly, it's the money. There's such a huge life-altering contract that's staring at you. You just have to figure out a way to grab the pen.
When you talk about money, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. The NIL money, the name, image, and likeness money coming out of the NCAA now will present some challenges for getting quality players north of the border. So I think there needs to be even more focus on Canadian quarterbacks and how we can develop them. Because if you take guys from big schools in the US, they've made millions of dollars throughout their university career now with that money, and the CFL becomes a lot less enticing.
I don't know if I agree with that, because they've made their money. Now, do you want to play? If you're not going to be touched by the NFL, the UFL, for whatever reason, and you still want to play football, you've got some money in the bank, go for it and have fun. This is a McLeod Bethel Thompson approach. He made a lot of money before he came to the CFL. He wanted to play football. That's why he was here. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that are doing the same thing. Had chances in the NFL, didn't see an upside, but they made some money and they're up here playing. I know the NIL is going to be life-altering in terms of what these kids, especially quarterbacks, as you say, running backs, and maybe the odd receiver, make in college. If you want to play the game, what are your options?
It's something that you do have to, I agree with you to a point. I think you make some good points there on the opportunity to play. I just feel that there will be some guys that'll cash out. They will have made a lot of money coming through the college ranks. The NFL isn't for them. They check out. They're not going on a football field anymore. We know the wear and tear that football takes on the human body as well. It's a pretty short window. So if you can come through college and walk away with that life-altering money, there's going to be some guys that are taking that route as well.
But do you want those guys in your camp? I know it's tough to vet and see if you can figure this out. This is a major problem for the CFL on that level. But the guys that want to come up here, money or no, are going to come up here because they want to play. And I think, honestly, if I'm a GM, I'd rather have a guy that's made his money but still wants to play rather than a guy that's looking to see if he can pad the coffers.
It's definitely the explosion of NLA money has shifted the dynamic and really changed a lot of things. And like I said, I certainly see some of the points that you're making as well. I don't begrudge the players for getting paid through NIL money either. The NCAA has made billions of dollars in revenue without paying players for generations. And it's now you're seeing some of that money trickle down to the players. What I don't like to see is all of the transfer windows as well of guys jumping ship from one organization, from one institution to another as much as they are right now.
But the odd thing in college football in the United States is that you're starting to see other teams, non-traditional powers, make it through. And I don't know if this is going to last, but it's kind of nice to see a team that you didn't normally think of as a Power Five is now winning the national championship. If the NIL money does that for them, where it levels that playing field, it doesn't matter where you play, you're going to still probably make the same amount of money. And if this one is working out, Indiana, for instance, then go for it, enjoy it, and get your trophy.
Third down.
We are a dedicated football podcast, but every once in a while we get something across our desk that kind of surprises me. And this we're dropping on Wednesday morning. I think we'll be safe with releasing its information, but a stunning information, if I can just read this. The NHL Communications Department has released a press release stating that the NHL is exploring 100-yard long hockey rinks. This would be a major departure from the traditional look of NHL rinks as people have come to expect, but we feel it will speed up the pace of the game and create more opportunities for scoring. The other thing that they mention in this is that they're seriously considering putting the goals into the end board.
You're essentially eliminating Gretzky's office behind the net. You're not going to have that opportunity to play out. It will be a lot more wide open game. And it is a bit of a throwback to bandy, the Irish ice sport that was maybe some of the inspiration for hockey to begin with. It's on a much larger ice surface, which measures 90 to 110 meters by 45, 50 meters. So almost the size of a CFL field as it stands now is what we were seeing in Hurley. This could be revolutionary.
Well, I'm wondering if the NHL is trying to harmonize with what the Canadian Football League is doing and the NFL is already doing. That's having a 100-yard long playing surface. And it would certainly harmonize across those major sports. I don't think the NBA, if you had 100 yards long, that would be a lot of dribbling to get up and down. But you can move a puck up and down the ice pretty quickly. And the one that surprised me that they're considering is actually putting the nets into the board so that you don't have that obstruction of the net where the camera angles are blocked. You can't see where the puck is. I'm sure center would stay the same. Where do you put the blue lines in this new arrangement? And what about the players' benches? Do they move towards each end? How do you accommodate that?
That was my biggest question, was the line changes, especially in the second period when you've got that long transition period. It's going to be an extra long transition period. So they maybe look at adapting a little bit more of what lacrosse does. If you've ever been to a professional lacrosse game, you've essentially got offensive zone players and defensive zone players. So you're changing on the fly. As soon as the puck comes back out of the offensive zone, those guys are all skating to the bench. You're getting your defensive specialists in to play at the other end.
That's a possibility. The other thing to think of too is that in volleyball, the teams exchange benches after every game. They could do that in this as well. You're not really wedded to the bench that you're on. You could just move to the next one. That would put you closer to your own goal if that's what you want as your prerogative. That's up to you. The big question I have is, how do you accommodate this? Because you think of the rinks that they're in right now, the stadiums. You've got all these beautiful facilities, and now they're going to have to take the ends off and run them right out the door. And probably, I don't know if some of these stadiums have enough room to accommodate this. So they're probably going to have to play outdoor hockey for a few years. This isn't proposed until, if I read this right, until about 2030 when they're actually looking at implementing. But this would be a significant change in terms of configurations within these buildings. Would you have to have open air because of the length of the actual playing surface?
It'll be massive retrofits to get this in. But fortunately, of all of the NHL franchises, I believe the vast majority of them are in cities that have either a CFL or NFL size stadium to accommodate until such time as they can retrofit the indoor facilities. There could be some pretty cold games in Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg outdoor until they can get this sorted out. Maybe you look at how you do the schedules with longer road trips during January, February, and longer homestands in those cities when the weather is a little bit nicer.
What type of player would you want? You don't necessarily want the quick burst player. You're going to have to get maybe they go to the speed skaters and see if they're available because they're used to longer distances. It's going to change this game markedly. The cost point of trying to do this. But if you want to harmonize with the CFL and the NFL and you want to go to 100 years long, what are your choices?
The big thing is, do you increase the number of players on the playing surface? Or are you 5-on-5? And are we looking at now more soccer type scoring where there's a lot of 1-0 games, 2-1 games? Or does this open things up to kind of what we saw from the offensive output of the 80s style of up and down NHL, where you're winning a lot of 9-8 games?
I hope it's the latter for the NHL's sake, but I'm sure that's probably why they're investigating this. As I say, we're a football podcast, but the fact that the NHL is looking to do this on Wednesday, April 1st, kind of is wild.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble podcast. Audio worth watching.
1972 Grey Cup, Hamilton's Ian Sunter connects on a 34-yard field goal with time expiring. Final score Hamilton 13, Saskatchewan 10.
2nd and 10 at the Hamilton 54. Really a gain over the middle. It's good to Tony Gabriel, and he's down to the 42-yard line. 51 seconds left in the ball game. 15-yard gain for Tony Gabriel, who picked up his 3rd catch of the day. Now has 53 yards. Over the middle there, and it is good to the 26-yard line. That was Garney Henley. Made a great catch. 16 yards was the length of the gain, and it was 2nd and long yardage. Garney Henley has 8 catches for 119 yards. Field goal is good. It would be a new record because only 2 have been kicked in a Grey Cup game. And now the line of scrimmage will be the 27-yard line. If it's wide, will they return the kick? Saskatchewan has Al Ford back there along with Bob Pierce, 2 punters. Henley will hold. They'll try from the 34. It's good. And that'll be it, the last play of the game. The Hamilton Tiger Cats on the last play of the game kicked the field goal to beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders 13-10. Young Ian Sunter, the pride of Dundee, Scotland,